On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 2008. We're going to be taking a look at Nik Kershaw, and he's going to be performing Wouldn't It Be Good? Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So, let's get Nik up on screen and see how he gets on.
It's getting harder, just keeping life and soul together. I'm sick of fighting, even though I know I should. The cold is biting, keep reaching every nerve and fiber. My broken spirit is frozen to the core. Don't wanna be here, no. Wouldn't it be good to be in your shoes, even if it was for just one day? Wouldn't it be good if we could wish ourselves away? Wouldn't it be good to be on your side? The grass is always greener over there. Wouldn't it be good if we could never allow to care? You must be joking, you don't know a thing about it. You got no problem, I'd stay right there if I were you. I got it harder, you couldn't dream how hard I got it. Stay out of my shoes if you know what's good for you. The heat is stifling, burning me up from the inside. The sweat is coming through each and every pore. Don't wanna be here no more. Don't wanna be here no more. Don't wanna be here no more.
I'm just going to jump in here, and full disclosure on this one, Nik Kershaw is a voice of my youth, and certainly listened to a lot of him while I was growing up. And this performance, obviously 2008, in the mid-80s is where Nik was really flying high, and he played at Live Aid in 1985. Also, the link to this video is going to be in the description below, so you guys can check it out in full without me interrupting it. But the thing about Nik Kershaw and his sound is the way that it is so progressive, considering that in the mid-80s it would have been mainstream and a lot of people would have been getting into this. It's because it's been so well put together. And a few weeks ago I was watching a Top of the Pops 2, which is where they do show other bands and artists around at that time, and it was literally just one show from the mid-80s, and there was at least one example of a band, or at least a record label, who was trying to get their artist or band to sound like this. And when I say that, I mean be progressive but in the mainstream. And it is such a difficult thing to do, to write a good song that's going to appeal to a lot of people, that has a lot of progressive elements in there. And when I say that, I mean jumping to chords that you're not expecting, and going on a journey that visits lots of different places that are a little bit off the beaten track. And that's certainly what you get with Nik Kershaw. Just to give a quick example of what I'm talking about, in this song, in the intro, we've got this. So this is all based around our C going down to our B flat and then our D minor. And also the other thing is that Nick's playing the chords in this formation, you know, like playing an A shape, but barring the chord as well, in order to get that high E string in there. So, like I said, we've got D minor, we've got our C, we've got our B flat as well. And then when we jump into the verse, it just hits you from nowhere because we go from an E to a B. So then, once we've jumped into this verse, you'll realize as well, another thing to point out here is the appreciation of dynamics and the way that Nik has composed this song with such a drop after that chord change, because it just goes to that synth sound, just single notes being played, and just the vocal as the focal point. Obviously, the drums continue as well, but everything drops out. So you get such a contrast between the intro and the verse. But then the verse goes through and we have this jump down to C. And melody-wise, we have the na 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 na. Da na 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 na. I don't wanna be here no more. And then it gets into that pre-chorus into the chorus. So those chord changes, just to play through them again to get this in perspective, we're going to a C. This is after we've been on B. So we get this jump down to C. Da na 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 na. I'm just na-naring the melody over the top. But that was a C to a G. And then we go to a G flat minor. Da na da na na. C sharp minor. G sharp minor. Da na 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 na. E. Da na. B minor. Into a D sus2. I don't wanna be here no more. So just those jumps are so cleverly put together to complement the overall melody, and there are so many chord changes here. And as you guys will know, with a lot of popular songs, they have maybe 3 or 4 chords in, whereas just in the verse here into the pre-chorus, we're going all over the place. But because it is so well put together, you're not really questioning how many chords are in there. You're still just listening to the melody and the lyrical content of the song. So we've got this full band set up here, and we're getting such a full sound. It's a great representation of that original record, and the horn section getting involved as well, which is where the backing vocals are coming from. So multitasking, and just to put the spotlight on Nik's vocal, because he has that consistent tone throughout his whole range, and it's something that will fly under the radar in this performance, but in this composition, the difference in pitch and the range that Nik has in his voice, because in the pre-chorus we are hitting an A2, and you can find that on your keyboards or on your guitar. It's easy, it's just your open A string. But then, when we get into the chorus, he's hitting an F4. And if you want to find where F4 is on your guitar, it's the first fret of the high E string. But it means that within this composition, from that pre-chorus into the chorus, we're covering closer to 2 octaves than 1 octave. And I do mention in other songs about that 1 octave change that you'll get from the verse into the chorus in order to climb that mountain and reach the peak in the chorus, because that's where you always want your highest notes. But here, Nik is covering such a range with his voice that you might not appreciate or notice as much because of his tonal consistency. It is something that you're going to feel as we progress through the song, from the verse into the pre-chorus into the chorus. That change in pitch will make it more dramatic in the chorus, and it is that gradual ascension in pitch that takes you on that journey, and you'll only notice the actual notes being sung when you analyze them and write them down as you're going along, but otherwise you're just going to feel the effect that those notes have on you. We are going to be getting back into the performance, and we've got this solo section coming up. Unfortunately, Nik's guitar is really low in the mix, but he's a great lead guitarist, so it is a shame that we're not going to be able to hear it really clearly. You can just make it out if you listen in really closely to your speakers, but let's get back into this. And there we have it. And also, just take notice of that atmosphere, because I know that this is being recorded in a studio and everyone's sat down, but you can see everyone clapping along during the performance and they're all so into it. Just a quick word on Nik's lead guitar ability, because it is hard to make out in this performance because he is so precise with his playing, and he is following that melody that the horn section is playing as well. So it is difficult to make out, but he's got that control of vibrato, which is one of those things that all the top players have in order to get the guitar to sing. And you would have been able to just hear it in the mix, but it was really low. It's something that I'd love to have that right up front in the mix, because Nik is such a great player. And it is something that he started playing from a young age and taught himself how to play. So he didn't have lessons, he just found his own way of doing it. And having that control just sells a solo. And once you've got a guy who is in control on the fretboard, it means you can really start to relax and listen to the guitar as a voice. We are going to get briefly into Nik's history. I think he was destined to get into music in some way, shape or form, because his dad was a flautist and his mum was an opera singer. And he didn't make it in his teenage years. He wasn't one of these child stars. He left school and got a job at an unemployment benefit office, and he had a band called Fusion, and unfortunately that all ended when he was about 24, and at that point he decided that he was going to go for it as a solo artist, and he put an advert in Melody Maker magazine here in the UK looking for a manager, and he did get a response to that. It was Mickey Modern who replied, and through Mickey he got a deal at RCA Records. So age 25, he released his first single, and this would have been in 1983, and that was called I Won't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, and that was a huge hit. It got to number 2 hit in the UK, but it charted really well all across Europe. And in 1984 is when he released this song, Wouldn't It Be Good? And this was another huge hit. It got to number 4 here in the UK, but also, importantly, he made a video for it where he was wearing a chroma key suit, and he was an alien, and it meant that on MTV he got in regular rotation there, and from that exposure it opened him up to the US market, so he did well over there. I think he got to number 46 in the USA. So that first album was called Human Racing, and that was in 1984. Also in 1984 he released The Riddle, which was the follow-up, and it's interesting, recently I featured Mark King, who plays on that album, and Mark's from Level 42. You can check out that video independently if you want to, but that album went multi-platinum, and the title track was a huge hit here in the UK, got to number 3 in the charts, and in 1985 he played at Live Aid, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. Around this time as well, Elton John asked for Nik to play on one of his songs, and that was Nikita. In 1986, he released Radio Musicola, and in 1989 was The Works. And interestingly, in 1991, there was a huge hit here in the UK called The One and Only, and that was performed by Chesney Hawkes. The song was written by Nik, and interestingly, on the video that I did, on the tremolos, I mentioned Chesney's name because he is the son of Len from the Tremolos, Len Chip Hawkes if you want his full name, but you can check out that Tremolos video independently if you want to. In 1991, he worked with Tony Banks, and that's the same Tony Banks of Genesis fame, keys player. In 1993, he wrote a song for the Hollies, which was called The Woman I Love, and that was a hit for them. Of course, Nik is a great songwriter and wrote for many other artists and bands. In 1993, that same year, he did feature on Elton John's Duets album, and interestingly, on that, Nik featured on Old Friend, which was a song that he wrote and he produced and played all the instruments on. In 1999, he released 15 Minutes, and in 2001, To Be Frank was released. He's also collaborated with lots of different bands and artists, and Bonnie Tyler's in there, Sia as well, Gary Barlow, who's a very well-known songwriter and musician here in the UK. In 2006, he released You've Got to Laugh, and that was an album that he just released online. It was available on iTunes and through his website, and in 2012, the 8th album was released, and that was called 8. That same year, he did work with Steve Hackett on the Genesis Revisited 2 album. Nik was still performing live up until the coronavirus outbreak, which unfortunately has stopped not only him, but every artist across the world. But hopefully that situation will improve soon. He is such a unique artist. It's great to have a look back at this performance because of that vocal range, the way that he composes songs, but also that ability on the fretboard, which we didn't get to hear that clearly, but take my word for it, check out some other videos of Nik playing live on YouTube because he is a great lead guitarist as well. Thank you guys for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!